Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're so excited. Tonight's just going to be honestly a hoot and the holler. We were just chatting beforehand, and we have quite an event in store for you. I'm Cassie. I'm the director of social media and marketing at The Novel Neighbor. And if you haven't been to The Novel Neighbor, we are a women-owned and operated indie bookstore in St. Louis, Missouri. We have books of every genre. We do events, a ton of romance events, but romance and events in every genre as well. And tonight is one that we're really, really excited about. The Love Remedy has been a staff favorite in every which way. You'll see a million different staff reviews because everybody needed to have their hands on it. And Elizabeth Everett is tonight in conversation with Ali Hazelwood, the incredible romance author herself. So I'm going to introduce them before I bring them on screen. Ali Hazelwood is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of Love Theoretically and The Love Hypothesis, as well as a writer of peer-reviewed articles about brain science, in which no one makes out and the ever after is not always so happy. Originally from Italy, she lived in Germany and Japan before moving to the US to pursue a PhD in neuroscience. When Ali is not at work, she can be found running, eating cake pops, or watching sci-fi movies with her 3 feline overlords and her slightly less feline husband. And we're very excited to have Ali in conversation. And the woman of the hour. Elizabeth Everett lives in upstate New York with her family. Her work has received critical acclaim from BuzzFeed, Kirkus, Booklist, Publishers Weekly, Pop Sugar, Entertainment Weekly, and various other outlets. Elizabeth's novels are inspired by her admiration for rule breakers and belief in the power of love to change the world. And with that, I am going to bring Elizabeth and Ali on screen. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi.
What you all missed is all of us figured out how to get the image of the Love Remedy on our phones ahead of time.
I feel like, at Taylor Swift concerts when she plays Marjorie, everyone.
You know that I know what you're talking about. Absolutely. All right.
I know you do.
I will let you ladies take it away. If you are watching, please ask questions in the comments, and we will do a question section with Ali and Elizabeth towards the end of the event. So you guys have fun, and I'll be back in a little bit.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Cassie.
Thanks,
okay.
Cassie.
Hello. Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
I am fine. How are you?
Well, I'm great. That was very natural. It's almost as though we didn't speak 5 minutes ago. Okay, so thanks everyone who tuned in. I am so excited. I feel like I would look more excited if I had an actual physical copy of the book, but unfortunately, I am going to Germany tomorrow, and I have not stepped foot out of my house because I need to pack, and I haven't packed, by the way. So we do not have a physical. And Elizabeth is in New York, which is not where she usually. She usually is in New York State, but not in New York City, which as I understand, are different places.
You know what? Most Europeans don't understand that. So
I have no idea what is going on there. I have stopped wondering because I'm like, whatever. But this is the book.
Oops.
And I was going to ask you later about it because, first I was going to talk about something else. But this is a marked difference between this cover and your first 3. And it's a new series.
It is a new series.
But I loved your other covers, but this one is
it's art.
It's how did this happen?
So I have the most amazing cover designer, Rita Frangi, and she designed the first 3 covers, the covers to my first series, and she's great. She just took feedback, and she kind of had a sense of that they were Victorian, but they were also kind of rom-com-y. And I said for this series, same universe, but a little bit darker, a little bit tougher, picking up some different subjects. And they sent me these sketches, and they were almost there. And then all of a sudden they sent me this finished cover that was just it was perfect. It was perfect.
Was it this one or
it was that one, except there wasn't a frog. So I asked them to put a frog in because that plays a little part in the book.
Important plot point.
But I am so in awe of their talents. I'm so grateful. It is so beautiful. And it captures the whole feeling of the apothecary, and the fact that it's a little bit, the first series is very lighthearted. There's silhouettes. They're almost Valentine-y looking. and then this is it hints at that it's a little bit darker, a little bit heavier,
Yeah.
and it's just beautiful.
And it's a little bit like chaotic as well, which is,
Mm.
you know, the vibe of the apothecary and of like Lucy's life generally. She's, you know, handling a lot of things at once. So I love that. So we actually meet a lot of characters that were in your first 3 books.
Yes.
And like there is a general setting. I don't want to spoil too much, but like there is a general setting, and the way Thorn, the hero who is a bodyguard, is hired. So what prompted you to want this to be another series as opposed to just like I guess I don't know. Yes.
With an original idea. Well, the older you get, the more your brain works. So, I think because I'm still telling stories about women scientists.
Mhm.
Is why, because science is still under attack. Women do not have parity in the scientific fields, academically, commercially. And there's still so many women that the secret scientists who I think of, and those are women who've come before, whose names were never included on the papers for which they contributed, whose work was sometimes completely stolen by their, male counterparts. So I'm not done. I was not completely done telling those stories. But I didn't want it. It's still a rom-com. I still put, my third grade humor in there. People are still stepping on banana peels, but it's still such a rich time period to mine. And I still think I have something to say that that particular time period in this particular genre lets me say.
By the way, I need to tell you this because I was at the Stimulant store opening a couple of weeks ago, and there was an author who writes she writes Victorian books, and she was complaining about, or she was saying, despite the cover, I write Victorian, not Regency. And I was thinking so hard about you because and I speak as someone who's so ignorant, doesn't really fully understand the difference between Regency and Victorian. But this book is Victorian, as I understand from reading it. Do people still confuse the time period?
So yeah, well, yes, because but to give them, so Regency is the traditional period in which historical romances are written because of Georgette Hare. So most people go in expecting them to be Regencies, and when things pop up that are obviously not Regency, they get very upset. Why are you using that word in the Regency period? And
what is an example of something that is Regency? Like, it's obviously not Regency, but it's obviously Victorian.
So, I write early set Victorian, but like later set Victorian, obviously, like there were trams, right? They would get on the tram. Even now, even in 1842, they had trams. They had trains. There were no such things as trains, as steam. I mean, the steam engine, I think, was, I'm going to say 27, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
I just love this, that off the top of your head. Like, if you asked me when was it invented, I wouldn't even know to put like a century. It's like, I don't know, the Middle Ages.
I do so much research for these, and then it all sits in my head and none of it makes sense. So there's stuff like that, when people get upset because there's a train in your book.
And you're like, ma'am, sir, this is a Victorian book.
Ma'am.
Doctor?
But it's like people who get mad because there's romance in their mystery. And again, ma'am.
This is a romance novel.
This is a romance novel.
Well, but you always have all these kind of like mystery adventure subplots.
Yeah, I
Which
think
you wave in very well. Like it feels very seamless to me. It's like they sort of drive the romance in your
yeah,
book.
yeah. I guess it's really that I'm not very original. I can't figure out another way to like. Once again, you're showing.
Okay, to write a mystery, you have to be original because that's how you make people. Because if it's not original, people don't perceive it as a mystery. So just you're intrinsically original because you are writing that.
That's a great save.
I hope that made sense. It made
good.
sense in my head.
You're good.
Thank you. So how does that happen? Asking for a friend who's trying to write mysteries in their novels.
So it's so I didn't start out trying to write historical romance. I started out trying to write historical mystery because I'm such a big fan of like Deanna Rayburn and Tasha Alexander. And everybody who read the first draft could tell like within the first 3 paragraphs who did it. Like I'm so bad at writing like just straight mystery. They're like, oh, look at the butler did it. So
Was it actually the butler doing it? Was it?
No, it was okay. So the only mystery like I actually got halfway through, it was a deranged priest.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like those
they were like the priest. They were
the priest, the butler, like you kind of, it's not your fault. It's just we are kind of attuned to distrust them. Yeah.
Wow.
Sorry to the priest, but you know what you did, guys. Sorry. I'm Italian, I can say it. Anyway, please carry on.
Okay. Let's keep going. I don't even know what you asked. Let me.
The question was, how do you wave in different elements of your story?
How do I wave in
so seamlessly
in the story?
Yes.
I make shit up as I'm going along, to tell you the truth.
How much, like when you get to the end of the book, how much do you have to rewrite so that it actually makes sense? Or like, do you feel like it's
so I think that the first drafts that I turn into my editor, I think basically the plot is set. I think where I really enjoy going to town is when she sends it back and I really hone in on all the small things, like the way they interact with each other, like the way they what they touch and how they're feeling and where they're standing. And like I get in, that's enjoyable for me. So to deal with structure is not enjoyable for me because that hurts my brain. So I try and get it out of the way. I'm a plotter. So not so much this one, but a lot of my other books, I used to put the scenes on index cards and have different points written in different colored ink. And then I would spread it out in front of myself so I could see where everything went. So that I had the plot as like the scaffold.
Mm-hmm.
And then once that scaffold is built, I don't have to worry about the structure anymore. And I can just add on and have fun with all the details.
How I guess detailed is the scaffold? Like, do you leave yourself room to kind of like surprise yourself?
Yes, because again, they're not, I mean, they have there's always a mystery in them, but they're not mysteries. So you have tons of wiggle room. At least I think I have tons of wiggle room until people say that was a dumb mystery. That was it. So yeah. So I leave, so in that respect, I don't dedicate a whole bunch of time and strategy to an intricate plot. So my scaffold is basic because what I love about reading romance, which I never thought I would because I came very late to romance. But what I love about romance is how how you navigate, how characters navigate those obstacles between them, and how big or how small the obstacles are, and that internal dialogue or monologue they have in their head while they're facing these great fears. To me, I just find that so compelling. I've been reading okay, I can't even remember the name of it. So a book about heroines, but romance heroines, and positing different theories about what they represent. And one of them is that the heroine starts out, she's being pushed out of wherever it is she's come from, like she's been exiled from there, and she's kind of trying to put her in, and she's feeling fractured. And so the romantic journey for her is putting things back together and finding herself in a place where she's happy again. And that's what I find interesting about romance. Not necessarily who done it or where they did it or who they did it to.
And I feel like, especially in historical romance, and also like especially in the romance that you write, usually like there are two layers of conflict, and this is you kind of a pattern. There is the conflict of we cannot be together because society, and then there is the conflict of we have a past, and because of our past, usually people. It depends. Like in this specific situation, in this specific book, both characters have had. Both characters have not a lot of faith in love at this point because of previous experience. So you have like these two layers of conflict, and I'm like, well, that's it. These people are never going to end up together. That's what I think at the beginning. Like it just cannot work out. But you make it work out, and I'm like, damn her! How did she do it?
Yeah, because I think that in our own lives, people that we admire and that we find inspiration from, they're people who something in their life had shattered and they're trying to put it back together, and you see them, you watch them, and they have this everyday courage that I at least find really fascinating and inspiring. And I think there's a nobility in being vulnerable, and I try very hard to point that out in all the books, because I feel like that's something that we right now are not very sympathetic to as a culture: vulnerability and making mistakes and screwing up and trying to find your way. There's not a lot of grace given right now to people. But I think that people who ask for it and who need it are much more courageous than people who need it and don't ask for it or try and cover that up. So I like the fuck ups. I like the people who have made big mistakes, who have really screwed up, but that doesn't define them. That's not who they are. That's what they did. And and now they've got to get back on the right path. Like now they have to make it better. Now they have to make amends. Now they have to. And I also think that a lot of my books are really, they're stories about the heroine. They're definitely romances. They're definitely love stories. But it's her arc that I'm thinking of the entire time I'm writing the book. Like what she's dealing with and how she's dealing with her, and the hero is always going to be lifting her up at some point, because those are the relationships that I have, and those are the relationships that I'm interested in. And other people can write other relationships that they find fascinating. We all have a place. But especially now, I just think we are lacking in grace. And I have been given grace so many times in my life, and I'm so appreciative of it. I want to celebrate grace. I want to, put that front and center. Yeah, this guy, he makes a mistake. He screws up.
Yeah.
And he reflects. And he changes, not everything. He doesn't change his entire self. He doesn't turn into like a sign-toting feminist, but he reflects and he listens because he loves this woman.
But that's what we like, for example, about Mr. Darcy, right? Like the reason we like him is that he screws up, but then when he's told, you screwed up, he's like, wait, I'm gonna take some time on my own with my younger sister in my very big house, and I am going to change and better myself. So that's kind of, it's good to see a hero who screws up sort of get better, because what it proves to you is that it's someone who can listen, right?
Listening. Yes, absolutely. And that's the other thing I think that has gone by the wayside in this day right now of social media, when all our messages are hot, they're instant, and they're condensed. So we lop off the nuance, we lop off the complexity. It's just these statements that we throw out to each other. There's the reflection is I think reflection is almost always also seen as a sign of weakness, the same way that grace is, or forgiveness, or mistakes. You want to take time. I'm tweeting right now. I'm going to send this message out right now. I'm angry right now, and I'm going to throw. There's no space anymore, or
for growth and
even to take a step. Like if you take a step back, you've been canceled. Well, there's no in between right now in a lot of things. And
I feel like Lucy is very much the type, like Lucy she's in a terrible situation, which in a way, I wouldn't say it's her fault, but like it comes from mistakes of hers. And like she definitely needs grace, and also kind of to forgive herself a little bit. Like we meet her, well, we don't meet her like that, but like one of the first things that she asks is whether she can like hire someone to kill someone else, which I was like, oh yeah, I would love you forever. This is but you also say that she is inspired by real life people. Are those are two women called Elizabeth, or am I wrong? Is that?
Oh yeah, so she is. Yeah. So
just saying, this is like Jane Austen calling Jane the best sister. It's like both women called Elizabeth.
So there are two Elizabeths who were the inspiration for this book, and okay. So the premise of this book is this woman is an apothecary, and there were actually.
Oh yeah, guys, let's talk about what the book is about. Yeah. Sorry.
Lucy is an apothecary, and an apothecary in the 1840s in England was a dentist / pharmacist / cosmetic purveyor /
she pulls teeth. Like,
yeah, that's what they did.
How hard it is, like to pull a tooth. Like,
it is when a tooth is rotten. Yeah, not fun. But I always like to throw that in. I'm like, hey, it's a romance. Let's talk about rotting teeth. Let's start out with that. So sexy. And so Lucy has had an affair with a man, and she trusted him, and she showed him. I know, never did that. A formula that she had written for a salve, like a cream, for like a throat lozenge for strep throat. They called it a putrid throat back then.
Which, by the way, is like, ugh. It's
because they didn't know. They're just beginning to understand. They're just beginning to discover bacteria, but they didn't understand the effects of bacteria on the human system. So she showed him this formula for a throat lozenge, and he took it, and he is the son of a rival apothecary, and they produced it. They patented it, and they produced it. And she's furious because she's the one that did this, right? She thought she found respite with him, and instead he betrayed her. So what happens is she finds out she's been also developing a formula for a salve for croup. And croup, as any parent knows,
Can I just say that as I was reading the book, I kept telling myself, I wonder how this is pronounced in English. And then I forgot to check. I was like, is it crew?
Yeah.
Crew?
Crew. Crew.
I had never, like, I actually had to Google the term because
What is it? What is it in Italian? Crew.
I have no idea.
No.
Like, I just Googled it and the English definition came out and it was,
Okay.
What was it? Some cough, something cough.
So croup is something that babies will get where they.
I bet it's pertosse in Italian. Sorry, go ahead.
It is pertosse. It is.
Oh,
It
okay.
is. Yes.
Okay.
It is. So, but of course, back in the day, we didn't. Even now, babies get like two of my kids had croup at one point, and it's just terrible because you have to sit in a room full of steam to open their lungs, and they're just coughing and coughing. They
We
cannot.
get vaccinated, right? Or is there no vaccination?
There is a vaccination
Okay.
for pertussis. That's like whooping cough though, but croup can come on. Yeah. So she invented this childcare dilemmas. She invented a salve, an ointment for that, and her formula is missing, and so she immediately suspects that the gigolo who stole her first formula has come snuck back in and stolen her second formula, and so she goes to Tierney and Company, and Tierney and Company is a completely fictitious private detective agency that is a little bit based on the Pinkerton agency
bookkeeping firm,
right? And and so she convinces Jonathan Thorne, who is an ex-boxer, to work for her as a bookkeeper, but as an investigator to try and prove that this man, Duncan, his name is, has stolen her formula. And in return, not only she can't pay him very much, but she is letting him and his young daughter, Sadie, live in the apartments, set of rooms above hers for a reduced rate.
Important question. Are you getting feedback that Sadie is everyone's favorite character?
I am.
Okay, because I fell in love with her, and I was like, is it just me? Is it everyone? Okay.
No, everyone. So, so Thorne he's like one of my favorite kinds of heroes. So he's like a little bit tortured, kind of an enigma, doesn't talk a lot, sort of broody, raspy voice.
I love that.
Enigmatic. I just love it. I love it.
He's a man who also has kind of like screwed up in the sense that he has ruined his life and then he has unruined his life, which is something that makes a man very attractive to me because it means that if the life gets ruined again, he can unruin it. Does that make sense?
He could, yeah. But it just, I think also, so I love this character because what happens is he was once a boxer, and he was
can I just say that prize fighter sounds so much better than boxer?
Sorry. He was once a prize fighter. And, if anyone's interested in going down a historical rabbit hole, research prize fighting in the early 1800s in England.
I actually learned about this because Caroline Jewell also has.
I love her.
I love her too, and she has a bunch of like prize fighter books, and I was like, "Oh, this is so sexy!" Never would have thought.
I haven't seen anything new from her, and I really wish she would write again. She's wonderful.
She also wrote paranormal, so she was like literally. She was writing for both me and you.
I didn't know that. Oh, okay. So anybody. I mean, we could maybe ask Cassie to put it in the notes later. Caroline Jewell. Jewel
written like the jewels.
Jewel written like Carolyn with a Y. I highly, highly recommend anyone who's into historical romance checking her out. She's fantastic.
I have no idea if she writes Victorian, Regency.
She is her stuff. I know her stuff is later. It's not Regency, I don't think, because they're traveling to, I think it's probably.
There was that one where they traveled to Turkey.
They're in Turkey, yeah.
That was so good. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
So good.
Sorry.
It's okay. We're all okay. Gonna come back. Thorne was an alcoholic a prize fighter, and he had a mistress whom he was deeply in love with, who couldn't reciprocate all the way because she had demons of her own. And he left her for a tour of the continent as a prize fighter, because he needed to get out of that. He needed to get away from her because he was losing himself in her. And when he returned, she was dying, and she had a child. And he, to this day, or he doesn't know whether the child is biologically his or not, but it doesn't matter. The child became his. She passed, and he has and she has mixed race. His lover. So he has a mixed race child who has been born out of wedlock. And
now she's my child. I have adopted her.
And I think most people know that back in the day, that was a big deal. So he falls in love with his daughter, like almost immediately. He realizes that this is something that he's been given, that he's just been given. This is a gift. Mm-hmm. And he has to be the kind of person who can take care of this gift. So he stops drinking, but in order to stop drinking, the only way he can think of to be a person who is good enough to parent a child is to find the most strict, the most conservative religious sect he can find, because he needs boundaries and he needs things to be black and white. He is the kind of thinker who needs things to be straightforward. And so he becomes a very devout Methodist. And I could talk for hours about the history of religion in Britain, but suffice it to say, the Methodists at that point, the sect that he was in, like the church that he was in, did not dance, they did not drink, they did not play cards. And he needed that because he knew his was the kind of alcoholism where he knew if he went to one party and danced one dance, played one hand of cards, and had one beer, then it was over. His sobriety was over, and he would lose all control. So he raised his daughter as a single dad, with a very religious set of values and morals. But not in an exclusive way. Like, I always think of him as just holding on by his fingertips to this path, and just hoping and literally praying that he's doing the best he can. He's doing it the right way. And so he moves in to the apothecary's rooms above the apothecary. And he is committed. He's not drinking. He is committed to being very firm in his, he's drawn these very strict boundaries around himself. And one of his hard and fast rules is he's not going to fall for a pretty face again. He's never going to fall in love again, because that's what, screwed him up the first time. And of course, Lucy, the apothecary, it's not just that she's beautiful, which he resents. And that's what I thought that was really an interesting, that was fun to write, is like most guys are like, oh, she's beautiful. And he's like, she's beautiful. So, but not only that, Lucy has anxiety. She takes on way more than she needs to. She is the kind of person, I think we all know these. So if we're not that woman, we know these women in our lives who step up again and again and again when maybe they should go take a nap. But they can't for whatever.
Well, she also sort of found herself inheriting the apothecary when she kind of thought that her brother would maybe.
Right.
But it's good that she did.
It is good, but I think too. I think there's definitely a type that when they're given a responsibility, it becomes life or death for them. Yeah. And there are other people who can let go. Yeah. And Lucy is one of the people who cannot let go. And she's very anxious. And for Thorne, for her, I think that is as enticing, if not more enticing, than her appearance because she needs a hand to hold,
Right.
so she doesn't fly away.
And this like sort of connects to, yes, we will be talking about the sex scenes because basically who these people are, out in their life also informs their sex life
Yes.
and why they are so compatible.
Yes.
Which, by the way, excellent work there.
Thank you.
Very enjoyable to read.
That makes me so happy. I that really, really makes me happy. So thanks, Pumpkin. Yes. Yeah, I think that defines like I think that that's kind of like, we can leave it there in the definition in terms of their relationships, is that they are two halves of a whole, and they complement each other.
Right.
And yeah, and so there are also hijinks. I always put a few hijinks in, but the gist of the story is that Thorne searches for whoever stole this formula, and it was indeed stolen, and comes to not usually fall in love with Lucy, but he comes to reevaluate those very strict limits that he set for himself, that perhaps he can sing a song or listen to music or dance and not drink. Like, he starts to trust himself a little bit more. And I think the only way that he was able to do that was because he had to convince Lucy to trust herself.
So how, it's like what you're saying now about, like you were saying about this Methodist sect at the time. So like, I guess what I'm wondering is when you are plotting a story, how much Googling happens? And like, because all these are like a lot of interlocked steps. Like, do you have a huge breadth of knowledge about this period that gives you the ideas, or is it that like you're setting the story in this period, you start Googling, and that's where the ideas come from?
So
actually, I'm not even sure if it's on Google, this stuff.
It's not. Yeah, I mean, it's from different places.
Probably books.
Now I do. Now I have I think I have a pretty good grasp of the 1840s. This is the early part of Victoria's reign. And I think I do. I mean, I could talk for a long time about it, and people just their eyes cross. They're like, do you have to? But because this is, I just finished the 5th book in this time period. So, especially around scientific discoveries. So if you want to know, they didn't have vulcanized rubber back then. So they didn't have eyedroppers. So I just know the craziest, weirdest stuff. So yeah, but that doesn't inform the story. The characters come to me first. And for whatever reason, I wanted to write a hero who was a recovering alcoholic. And the only way, I mean, there's a few ways you could do it back then, but the only way I could see that would also bring him into direct conflict with the heroine was for him to come from a very strictly religious viewpoint. And I'm not putting it down. I don't think I put it down at all in the book. Because, and the reason I did that was because I knew I wanted to write about a woman who provided abortion care.
When did you start writing this? Was it before Roe v. Wade was overturned?
Yeah. It was.
Did you feel it in the air where you're like, oh, look at this Supreme Court?
It was before the decision was released, but it was after Dobson was taken up by the court. So it was after the court began to examine that. The court agreed to take Dobson, which is the case that has overturned Roe. And I, in the past, have worked for reproductive health and advocacy and justice organizations as a career, and it's something that's very close to me. And I knew I wanted to write about the subject, but I wanted to I wanted to do it in such a way as to, again, extend a little bit of grace.
Mm-hmm.
That it is not black and white. It's not an easy subject for anyone, that it's not something you can sum up in 126 characters. You can't talk about it in a tweet. You can't talk about it in a post.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to reality, when it comes to two people, no, when it comes to one person
Yeah.
who has to make a decision, it is incredibly nuanced. And I think the older I get, and the fact that I've had children and that they're children by choice makes me even more cognizant of how important it is to have that choice. And it's a great way to explore that, but not in a hit you over the head way, because it is removed. It's in the 1840s.
Right. And it's hard, but I think it does such a great job of talking about that, because so the type of knowledge that we grew up with, and, the type of even like discussions around consent and around, like us being owners of our bodies, I am assuming that in that era, they weren't as widespread. Like I'm assuming that a lot of people didn't even know how to read. Is that correct? Am I wrong?
Yeah, no, I mean, illiteracy is pretty common, but
So it would have been like a hard conversation and hard ideas to explain to some people, I'm assuming, not like right now where it's a sort of an easier conversation to have, because we all have the instruments to have the conversation.
So basically, for most of history, in most cultures, the distinction between a fetus and an embryo has been there.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a point in the 4th month of pregnancy when a woman generally feels it is a fetus at this point start to move. Before then, it was not considered a pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
It was considered like a possibility.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So when they did not want the pregnancy to go forward, they would induce menstruation.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because in the first 3 months, you know that 25% of all pregnancies are spontaneously
Miscarried.
Right. So this is something that women have always known about their own bodies. They know that not until the 4th month is this a pregnancy. It's just there's a chance that it becomes one.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a pregnancy. And so abortion care is never regulated before the 4th month.
Well,
just so you know that old-timey women had more reproductive autonomy,
right,
than women do today.
And it's so odd in a way to read it and be like, wow, like we are still having these conversations.
And the conversation actually only started in the 1800s because medicine became professionalized, and it was men who became doctors, and they began to establish hospitals, and they began to establish themselves. And what they did not want was midwives taking away their customers. So how do you demonize a midwife? Well, you decide because they do provide induction of menstruation, because they did provide that reproductive care, they demonize them. And it got even worse in the 1860s. And then it became, of course, in America, it became something political. It ceased to become something medical. It ceased to become something about your conscience. It ceased to become something spiritual. It became something political. And so I think we've lost all sense of what it even is.
And like, this is really what Lucy does. Like, all she wants is for women to have agency and to be in control of their bodies and to be able to make life decisions that are what is best for them. So it's such a in a way, her perspective is so refreshing to read, because she really just brings everything. It all boils down to what is best for women. What do women want? Like, how do we empower women?
Yeah, and I think that's true. I mean, I think that too, that what I tried to do is, Lucy is not agnostic. Lucy is also a person of faith.
Mm-hmm.
But her idea of faith is very much based on the idea that you do to other people what you have done to you, and this is a little of me going in there, because my own whenever I think about trying to be a better person in terms of my faith, I always think I need to see other people as children of God, as creations of God. And once you do that, once you see that the other person has divinity within them, and you see the beauty within them, then you treat them better. And that's how she thinks of herself. And I think it's wrapped up in how she provides healthcare, whether it's pulling a tooth or providing abortion care to a woman who's been assaulted. She sees the divinity in people, which I think is much closer to the spirit of Christianity than perhaps what Thorne sees, which is a set of rules. And he doesn't have any reference back from those rules.
But like you do a good job of explaining where he comes from and why he's like that, and like showed his growth and the way he starts seeing them differently. Yeah.
He's not a bad person. He's just that's the way people thought. Like all he's doing is representing the general consensus at the time. He's not a bad person. I don't think he's overly religious. I think he is a representation very much of the status quo at the time. And I think that Lucy is very much a representation of what women healthcare workers felt at the time. And yes, I tried to draw comparisons to today and to point out that we all need to give each other a little bit of grace in this arena. But I also wanted to point out that it was a little bit different back then, because you didn't have, it wasn't politicized per se. So I also have in the book, there's also a group of men's rights people who kind of serve as that, like as a reminder that, they're on their way to becoming more and more limited. Like, the politics is encroaching.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be that way.
Is it like, it's, is that a common thing for you? Like, do you feel like stuff that is happening politically right now or around you sort of informs what you are exploring in historical novels?
Well, I think that's why I started writing historical romance, was because I thought, oh my gosh, what a great subversive way to couch a viewpoint by comparing and contrasting to the past. And what I found was, the more I researched, the more I found that one, history is a story told by whoever has a pen in their hand. And so your history, if you wrote it, would be different than my history if I wrote it. So history is a concept. It's not a fact. And the second thing I discovered was that if we accept that, then we can accept that people in history are the same as people today. So, a lot of times I'll get pushback about having trans characters or queer characters.
I love Wintram.
But because it's not historically accurate. And I say it's not history as somebody else has, a straight white male.
It's a history that maybe hasn't been told as much because of
Right.
a bunch of reasons that have nothing to do with people not existing.
Right.
in certain
Exactly.
times. Yeah.
It's like sometimes if you read historical romance is stupidly white. Like it's so white that it's just ridiculously white because there's no, it's not real. Black folk and
Yeah.
poor folk and disabled
Well,
folk all existed
I
then.
Yeah, and I recently was doing an event with Beverly Jenkins, and she was, yeah, I know, like I now name drop this in a way. It's like, so I did this event with Beverly Jenkins. We're now best friends.
Me.
But she was saying how still there are very few historical romance that are written by authors of color,
Very
and
few.
yeah, like
Very few. Her,
so-
Piper Hughley, Vanessa,
Vanessa Riley, yeah.
Vanessa, who I just met at Love Y'all Fest. She's amazing.
Oh, she's amazing. I love her so much.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's great.
Yes. Yeah, there are. So there are a few because I just think that there's like, I mean, I also think too, when I was researching trans characters, there's maybe 2 or 3 books of real scholarship about queer history. And that's it, because it just hasn't been mined. Yeah. But it's there. They were there. And so I feel as though I'm just as qualified to write history or explain history as the next person is, because we all know it's looking back through a viewpoint of telling a story. And my decision is that I decided, you know what? People are good and people are just as kind then as they are now. And so we should write those kinds of books,
Yes, that makes total sense to me. Hi, Cassie.
Yes. Hi. You gotta unmute yourself.
Wow, that was back in the day.
It was a throwback to the beginning of the pandemic.
This is an incredible conversation, and the comment section is so thoughtful, and this conversation is so thoughtful. And I just wanted to make sure that we get a few audience questions answered.
Of course, yes.
This evening. So, Elizabeth, we have 2 questions about your favorite scene in the book, and one of them is about what is your personal favorite, and then one of them is what was your favorite to write. And I kind of thought those questions and the difference between them was interesting.
That is interesting, yeah. So my favorite scenes to write were definitely the scenes with Sadie, who is the 9-year-old daughter of
Allie's daughter.
My daughter, my child.
So I don't talk a lot about my personal life online, but I do have children, and it was fun writing a 9-year-old girl because I'd been through that stage. And actually, you know what? It doesn't matter what age they are. They all just like poop. Poop is just cool. Poop, it's fun. It's funny. It doesn't matter what age they are. I don't even think they age out of it, really. I mean, I've got, my kids are older now and we're still, So those are my favorite things to write. But I think my favorite scene, I love the scene in the book. It just came to me one night where it's early in the book and they're both in the dark. And Lucy has mixed him. Thorne is an ex-prize fighter, so his hands are just completely broken. So she's mixed him an ointment with capsaicin, which is basically hot pepper, the stuff that makes pepper hot. And she's rubbing it on she starts to rub it into his knuckles and his hands. And there's this moment where they're in the dark and they're just joined by their hands. And that's my favorite scene.
Okay. So what's funny is that I didn't read you the full question. The full question is, are you able to tell us what your favorite scene or moment in the book? And is it when Lucy helps Thorne with his aching knuckles?
Stop.
I just wanted to know if it would come out organically, and that's so good.
Yes, it is.
Consensus. Another question, which is, this has been my top read of the year so far, so congratulations. What prompted you to write a single father hero? They're my favorites. And I think from a romance perspective, hot single dads are also in. So where did he come from?
Can I just say that I had a question about him as a DILF and why? But then we were talking about abortion care, and I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I don't know how to segue to that.
We're off track.
Allie's DILF question. Actually, Allie hopped into the chat to ask
Exactly.
Where did he come from? When he came to me as a father. He just did like when he walked into my head.
Mm-hmm.
That's he was a man who had discovered that he had a child, or maybe. And every time I tried to sketch it out, it was always that he didn't know whether or not the child was his biologically, but it didn't matter. He'd all of a sudden had a child, and he fell. There are some dads that just they get a kid and they're like, oh my God, and they become completely different people. Like they realize, like they fall in love with their kids, with being a parent, with being a dad. Like I see it all the time. So I wanted to write someone like that.
I love that. And Allie, would you ever consider writing a DILF?
It's so hard to write about children when you don't know children.
You have a raccoon.
That is true. I should write more like men who own pets. That is
Well,
what that
in
is
Bride,
my
he's in Bride. He's like he's not as her father, but he's her father figure. And I think you did
but
a really good job with that
See,
relationship. Yeah.
I am sure that there are a lot of factually inaccurate things, but it doesn't matter because they're not humans. They are just
It's part of the lore.
exactly. I can be like, well, but the development of werewolf children, it's different.
No, I
So,
think you did do a good job. I think that was,
you.
how you I think how she interacts with children is a little bit similar to how you actually in real life interact with children by indulging their every whim.
I know, of course. I mean, we are not like we childless people. We are meant to be the spoiling aunts and uncles.
Uh-huh.
This is our role.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, you write historical, and Allie, you write contemporary. Would either of you consider swapping?
We were gonna do we're gonna do like
toxic affairs.
toxic affairs. We were gonna do something.
Well, no, we had that novella that because Elizabeth and I shared.
Do that. We got to do that.
We pitched to our editor, who said no. She said no.
She said no. You have to have a name attached to it. Allie.
Exactly. Anyway, we pitched. We had this amazing idea for a book that was divided in 2 novellas, and we wrote like the proposal. Did we write pages for it? Like, did we write like
pages? Yeah, you did.
I think we wrote like a proposal, like it was the plot of the book, and then like I think we wrote like
I was gonna write the cast, and then she was gonna write the great granddaughter.
Yes, and they were code breakers.
They were code breakers. They were mathematicians.
Yes. And then we were told no. We just self-publish it. Let's
We're
just
do it anyway. Yeah.
I would really
don't tell anyone.
I love that I had completely forgotten about this, but now I'm angry again. And we were told no. It's like, how dare she?
I think go back again now. Okay, I think one of the last 2 questions. How do both of you plot your stories? Are you note card organizers, or do you let characters tell you what they want to do?
Yeah, what do you do, Allie? Because everybody knows that I'm like an index card lady. What do you do?
This is a term that I have stolen from Adriana Herrera, who also blurbed this book, by the way.
Yes,
and the term
I see her tomorrow night. Yeah.
Oh my God! Tell her how much I love her, please.
I will.
Tell
you, Eloisa. So.
Oh yeah, you texted me and I didn't reply because I don't know. I think I was doing laundry or something. If I don't reply, you get me to a text.
Read every single one of your books now.
This is sort of like I don't think I don't think she should do that. I don't think she should soil her eyes with my writing. Please tell her to stop. But Adriana Herrera uses the term panty liner, panty liner, which I think she stole from Sarah Simone. So this is like a triple stealing thing. But like I bought, like I'll outline a little bit, but like then I pants a lot while I'm writing.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Liner, I like it.
Panty liner, right? Right. We should all use it.
Yeah. TM.
And
Yeah.
next time you talk about it, say I learned it from Ali Hazelwood, who learned it from Adriana
Who learned
Herrera,
from
who
Adriana
learned it
Herrera.
from Sarah Simone.
Oh.
All right, last question.
Okay.
Do you write to music or quiet? And a follow-up, have you made playlists for your most recent books?
What about you, Ali?
No, I write in quiet, but they make me write playlists for the exclusive editions. So I do that. And by make me, I actually mean my editor is there like flogging me if I don't do that. So yeah.
Yeah, I write in silence too. And that was why it was really hard during the pandemic. Because all of my kids were home and my husband, like everybody was home in my house, and they were doing online school in 3 different places. And and one of my children was a senior at the time, and their friends all had the same classes. So their friends were in my basement every morning doing Zoom classes together. And I would be tucked away somewhere on my laptop, like trying to write in silence. And instead I would hear this chorus of children, teenagers in my basement, just doing the most ridiculous shit. And that's why I wrote a lot about contraception at one point. I was like, oh, look at, we had so many kids.
Oh.
I love that you talk like you have 15 children. She has 3 children, guys.
I feel like I have 15, well, there's 15 children at my house right now.
Yes,
yeah,
yes, that makes sense. But
yeah.
And if there was an artist on each of those playlists, who pops up the most? Like if you had to make a playlist, Elizabeth.
I mean, mine is Taylor Swift, of course. I'm not even gonna.
I'm kidding.
Who would pop up most for these?
Would it be classical music? Like, is
No,
that our
I
historical
think,
books?
What's Phoebe Bridgers? What's the band she has with the other 2 women?
Boy Genius.
Boy Genius. I think Boy Genius. I think Ricky Lee Jones,
wow,
who I think is kind of one of the most romantic songwriters ever. Little Stanley Turrentine, a little bit of jazz. That's what I think. Yeah.
I love this question because then people can like make themselves a reading playlist if they can listen while they read. Ladies, thank you so much. This has been such an incredible evening. Thank you to everybody who tuned in and everybody who asked a question. It's just been an incredible time. And Elizabeth, congratulations on the publication day of The Love Remedy.
Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. Thank you, Ali, for all of your support. Thanks for everyone who blurbed. Thanks for everyone who has sent a little message today. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoy. And thank you to the Bookstagrammers, especially, who've just been amazing for this launch. They've been so helpful. So thank you.
Amazing. You can get a copy of The Love Remedy from the Novel Neighbor. We still have some pre-order goodies as well. And we're very, very excited. And just what a great event. Thank you all, everybody. And we'll see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.